A lot of the stuff that I took for granted from other people, I'm like, oh, this is actually quite time consuming. So, like,
we need to build you an AI that's just going to do all of this.
Yeah, actually, I interacted with your AI bot last night. I was so impressed.
We should use it as well.
Yeah.
I'll pull it up.
Okay, what's the best way to pose questions to it? And
yeah, I mean, if you want to pull it up too,
let's do it.
You can ask it a question and ask me the same question, and then
see sort of where it ends up. Okay, that's cool. I like that idea.
Yeah.
So I read your book. I've only read the first one, How to Live, and I was struck by a few things. The first one was, when do you qualify to give advice or write a book? Like, what was in your mind that said, like, now's the time for me to share this?
So writing a book is it's an immortality project, because it's going to last beyond me. My body will die at some point, hopefully not anytime soon.
Yeah,
but the book will continue.
Yeah.
I don't have kids yet, but I can only think of like those two things.
Yeah.
Kids and a book.
Yeah.
That will outlive me.
And the kids will kind of water down a bit, right? Like, they're not going to absorb everything that you have them. Like, got their own ideas. Like, they won't distill information well.
And they'll make up stories about me long after I'm gone.
Yeah.
That the grandkids and great whatever. So it really requires me to feel solid about my ideas or my experiences, to be willing to put it out there in the world forever.
Yeah.
In this era of Snapchat and Instagram where things disappear, a book is the opposite.
Yeah, I've definitely developed my reading later, and I'm sorry I didn't appreciate how much it teaches you. I think that reading was predominantly entertainment for me when I was younger, or like a necessary evil. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh wow, there's just so much that you can learn, or so much you can sort of take from other people's experiences without having to go through that same stuff. And the right books become immediately applicable. Like, my favorite book is The Little Prince. Like, it's a child's book, but and also Tuesdays with Morrie is like another one which
I love that book.
Incredible. And you know, once you become really good at reading or proficient at it, you become much better at like internalizing what you're
and applying it.
What you're applying. Did you find that writing the book, you were able to distill your thoughts really well? You were able to like really.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was 51% for me.
Okay.
49% for sharing.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that going into it. Going into it, I thought it was 99%, but sharing 1% for me. Mm-hmm. But and that's why there's actually a third book that's done as well. It's not printed yet. And it's so therapeutic because it forces me to be clear about what do I believe. And that knowledge is very helpful for me as I'm living still and the choices I'm making.
No, it makes sense. I've worked with a coach, and one thing that came out of it is like writing down what I really think about things. And I think that I often walk away from exchanges with people frustrated that I haven't articulated myself very well. And I'm like, and you walk away, you're like, I should have said this, or I should have said that. And the practice of writing down what you think about things forces you to face your argument, first of all, so you understand what your argument is.
Yeah.
And then it puts it out there for debate, which is like the next thing. And that for me is like a big part of writing. And did you journal before this, or have you always?
I was just going to ask you, do you journal?
I don't. I sporadically I've dabbled in journaling, but it's never been a consistent habit.
I'm gonna ask my alter ego. What do we call it? Do you journal?
Your digital ego.
Yeah. So I have been journaling for almost 10 years, almost every day.
Okay.
So I literally put pen to paper 5 out of 7 days a week for the last 10 years.
And is that a morning practice, or when does that practice happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Morning, meditate, post-meditation. It's unconscious. It just happens habitually. Some warm herbal tea and I use morning pages as a technique, if you're familiar with that.
No, I'm not. So tell me a bit more.
Very simple, few sheets of paper. I use a remarkable tablet, and you just write without stopping.
Okay.
So there's no moment to pause and think and frame and censor. Like even as I'm speaking now, something is censoring everything I'm saying. The part of the morning pages technique is to write without stopping, such that you bypass the censor, and then it taps into a stream of consciousness. The second part is to throw it out once you're done reading, which is counterintuitive. My hack on that is I can't even read it. It's so messy because I'm writing so fast and so small that nobody will ever see what I wrote, including me.
Okay.
So it's free of judgment. So I've created the space to really express whatever's inside. And the process of morning pages makes me aware of what's actually inside.
Oh, that's incredible. So that for me is like really incredible, because when we're talking, we're kind of thinking out loud, right? Like we're not presenting our thoughts in a structured way. We're kind of getting them out into the open so that we can start to put them in place. And writing it down is a very private way to do it, right? Like is to get that written down and then start to go from there. And then what's the process after that? Is it just like this? Is it like a cathartic release of everything, or is there some actionable that you take away from it after disposing of it?
This, you might have picked up on this in the book, but I believe that it's all about awareness and cultivating the skill of awareness. And I believe awareness is a skill, and it's one that can be taught and learned and trained. And I hope that young people, get taught it more. And mindfulness practices are one way, but there's many ways to cultivate the skill of awareness. I believe like 90% of it is awareness. And with awareness, the 10% action becomes almost automatic. Like if I'm aware of somebody that needs help, I will automatically start to lean in and try to help them. If I'm aware of a business opportunity, I will automatically start to consider that opportunity. If I'm aware of a challenge or a physical injury, then I'll start to take action based on that. So my bias is towards awareness over action. Action comes as a byproduct of awareness. So journaling is one technique to help me become more aware of what I think.
Yeah, that it's almost like physical meditation, because you're linked to a pen onto a piece of paper. And I know that you're very versed in meditation. It was like a pretty rough journey to starting in a foreign language. It was a foreign language, right? It was at the yoga retreat. Like you get into meditation. It wasn't for you. It was always this other thing. And then now you can sit for 3 hours. Every Saturday? Is it every Saturday you sit for 3 hours, or is it?
I don't anymore, but yeah, that was my framework. Something.
Your birthday was a 3 hour.
3 hours.
3 hour meditation, right?
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The simple framework is something daily, something weekly that's a bit more involved, be it a longer meditation or something with others, and then monthly or bi-monthly retreat or some form of environment that really allows me to go deeper.
And that's again linked to awareness. I mean, like my very basic understanding of meditation, and I have done it in the as far as like 10 minutes a day for like a stint. So I know enough to know how much I don't know in terms of meditation, but the some of the guided meditations that I've had was like, your mind wandering is an okay thing. Don't like try to beat it up about not being focused or being able to quiet the noise. It's to acknowledge the noise and then guide yourself back from the noise, or to try go deep into why is this noise, or why is my brain like a monkey. So I've had that very like sort of understanding of meditation, and so just linking that back to the journaling and the writing, or to the daily pages is that again, just let it go and then work back from there.
It's all the same.
All about awareness.
Meditation is not thinking. Meditation is about being aware of the thinking. It's not about trying to stop, control, or shape the thinking or direct the thinking. Same thing with morning pages and journals. It's not about trying to direct the journaling. Let me journal about this business problem that's on my mind, or let me journal about this emotion that's coming up. It's to allow whatever is there, because that is what is there. And then you can apply that beyond the practice to life. And all of these practices are called practices. They're practices for the moments we're not practicing and we're on the field, which is everyday living.
Makes sense. Like I know just in terms of practice, and it's maybe some way relatable, is when you do martial arts, the idea is to really work on the technique of it, because when you're under pressure, 50% of the technique goes away, because that's just how we are. We're responding in a stressful situation. But if I've practiced, my 50%. Remaining 50% is really good.
It's good enough to
to get you through whatever you need to get through.
It's the same thing with meditation and journaling. Yeah, I'm actually working on another book. It's called Unmeditate. The first person I'm sharing that with.
Oh, thank you.
And it's the ideas of meditation and mindfulness applied to everyday living. So It's a bit of an anti-meditation book. 10 years into the practice, 6+ years as a teacher now. I've learned a lot. I've meditated with tens of thousands of people. And the formal practice of meditation as we know it, to sit on the floor, eyes closed, cross-legged, is not for everyone. I used to believe it was for everyone. And
you just had to learn how to do it.
Yeah. It's just about more practice, more willpower, more discipline. And I don't believe that anymore.
So what is the change now? Is that?
It's the qualities, it's the principles of meditation that are the value. It's not the practice. The practice is one way to understand those principles, but I've come to learn there's many other ways as well. So that's what Unmeditate is going to be about, is how to bring it's mindfulness applied versus mindfulness in theory or in practice.
So I think that that quality component is so important, because life's crazy at the moment. Everything's kind of being funneled into fast bite, quick service, like really short. And I think that's eroding quality in some way. So now we have to maximize quality in different settings. And so being able to sort of distill quality in everything that you're doing is the new skill.
Is to appreciate whatever is there.
Yeah.
There's always going to be something shiny or something that's around the corner.
Well, we're speaking about this as entrepreneurs. It's like, this is idea. I'm definitely going to do this thing. Yeah. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
I wanted to just go back to the How to Live specifically, because it's your first book, right?
This is the first book. A long time coming.
And a long time coming. But now you've gone from first book straight into 3. I'll come back to just the prolific writing that you're now going into. But one thing that I took away from the book is that it seemed to me you climbed this mountain, you took a step back and said, okay, well, I'm here. I don't really feel better. And now I'm going to start doing these experiments on myself. And if there was a common denominator in the experiments, it was abstinence from comfort, or exposure to a little bit of what I call the suck. And that for me was the most intriguing part. And like, can you only do that once you've climbed the mountain of success? Like, you're in a position where you're financially comfortable, your business is doing what it needs to do. All these things are kind of working. Now I can really start messing with the engine. Is that it? Or do you feel that this is applicable to anyone, no matter where they are in their sort of journey?
Yeah, the stories in my life comes from a place of privilege, of never having to really feel like I've suffered. So life gets boring. So then I do these experiments to try to make it more interesting. Like moving to Portugal, I moved here on 3 days' notice.
Yeah, I remember when I met you here. This is this crazy story.
And I'm single, don't have kids, so I can make decisions like that. But I recognize the privilege and that life has felt comfortable for me. So I've tried to spice it up. The lesson that I hope people take away from How to Live isn't the specific tactics of how I went houseless, or how I went 2 years without buying anything, or meditated, for 10 years every day. It's more about the openness to try something new, try something outside of my comfort zone. So the word experiment is just one line in the book. It's probably one of my favorite lines, where I said, an experiment means I don't know what's going to happen. If I know what's going to happen, that's called a plan.
Yeah, makes sense.
So the difference between planning and experimenting, I think we plan a lot. I'm going to get into this university, or I'm going to close these clients, or I'm going to, have this body, weight. So we plan a lot. But to truly experiment means, the precondition means I'm open to the result. Like
Yeah.
a true like scientist experimenting in the lab.
Yeah, because it's not a hypothesis yet, right?
I don't know.
I'm completely going to expose element A to element B
Yeah.
and see
what happens.
See what happens.
And
I think that's venturing into the unknown, like the old saying is like, sort of growth begins like outside of your comfort zone. And the one thing that like really struck me in the book was when you gave up your home. And I'm going into a place of like, I've traveled the world. I've lived in a lot of places. I've been very comfortable with going out and setting up and doing startups, and it's crazy. But now I'm going into a place in my life where like home is a big deal, and I've got kids, and stability is a big one. And the structures around our day to day are like really important to me. I lose my mind if I lose structure. And when you had your kind of breakdown, in the street crying like homeless guy. And that for me was like, it really hit me in the book. I was like, this would be the ultimate suck for me. Like it's a big panic. I realized for me, not having a home is suddenly a big driver or a big panic for me in my life. Were there any other moments where you're like, this experiment's just too much?
So many. And then I had to remind myself, this is what I was looking for. I was trying to find the edge. I was trying to find where's my boundary. And I don't know where it is until I get very close to it. When I get close to it, it feels unpleasant and uncomfortable and frustrating. And there's a part of me that will judge myself and criticize myself for like, why am I doing this, and question it. And then that other part is important to balance it, to say like, actually, you wanted to find the edge.
Yeah.
And here is the edge. And
do you still do that? Like, has now that become practice for you? Is that like the standard for you now?
I do like to go to the edge. I don't like that I like to go to the edge.
Yes.
Like last week during Web Summit, you came on, I think it was Sunday, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Saturday night, there was a full party at my place, and Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday.
Okay.
And it was too much.
Wow.
And then we gave out, a couple thousand copies of the book throughout Web Summit, and I spoke at 12 events, and I was with my therapist earlier today, so that's why it's top of mind. But it was too much. And it was like, why did I do all that? I didn't need to.
Yeah.
But I guess I did need to, because I needed to find where my edge was.
So that was about finding the edge. Like it wasn't about, hey, I've got to get this book into as many hands as possible.
Yeah,
it was like
this entrepreneurial curiosity, creativity to say yes to life. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful to say yes to life.
Yes.
It's so much easier to say no.
Yeah, makes sense. And yeah, it is. But that's the daunting piece. And I think that people think that they're living when they're just stuck in the rut, but actually that's not where that's existing, like the difference between living and existing. And I think, why do you think so many people get so caught in like the existing piece? Like they don't go out to the living component that drives new awareness in them and happier lives.
I think we need to be inspired first. We need to be shown that it's possible. So a number of the stories, I shared my source of inspiration at the start. So, and hopefully this book inspires people not to do what I did, but to do their own version of living, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, definitely. Like it awakened in me the question of, am I? Have I become complacent? Am I still asking, the right questions of myself? Like, I know that my DNA has always been about, I want to do an Ironman. Okay, I'm going to do that. Like, it was like I didn't focus too much on the why I shouldn't. It was just like, I should totally do that. It'll be hard, but I'll get over that. And let me go live in another country, and let me go and experience like a new culture. And it's a startup. It's got like terrible, like sort of stability options for it, but I'm gonna go and give that thing a bash. Let me go and do these like crazy things. And your priorities do change a lot as you get older, and you sort of you pick up sort of responsibility. I just think the book really for me was one of these like thought-provoking. Am I doing enough with my life? Am I still setting an example for my kids of a life I want them to follow? So it maybe awoken more of the teacher in me. Like I want to be a teacher in this now. So I think I want to write a book. Like, I don't know what I'll write a book on, but I was like, geez, this is really cool that you wrote a book. I've always been so scared to write a book. Like, there must be an element of fear in writing a book.
There's an element of vulnerability.
Okay.
So at my birthday at the end of August, I gave 100 people a preview copy of the book. It was still in draft. And I felt it. I felt it in my chest. I felt exposed. And these are people that I invited to celebrate my birthday with me. Even last week, we gave out 2,000 copies of the book for free.
Yeah, you're out there now.
And that felt, I mean, the birthday is one thing. Everybody knows me. They're going to say it's a great book and they like me regardless.
Yeah.
But then last week was like really to strangers. And that feels vulnerable. But that's how I want to grow.
But is there an anonymity in that too, right? Like, here's my book. You're a stranger.
I don't care what you think.
Like, it's like, what are they going to do? You know, like, your close friends, I get the vulnerability in terms of like, that is, you're sharing with them, right? Like a very personal stuff. And we often put a persona up for people.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm evolving from, and I'm Canadian and grew up very much Canadian, which means Canadians like to be liked. Like, think United Nations. And
must be a South African thing too, because I'm the same.
Yeah. Canada or South Africa's role in the world is like we're very well liked by everybody. Like, the joke is people put Canada flag patches on their backpacks even when they're not Canadian, because they'll be treated better than if they had like an American patch or something.
Note to self, next tattoo.
Yeah, exactly. So being liked is something that's core to my identity. And that means I'm watching what I'm saying. That means I'm politically correct. That means I'm nice to everybody. I'm now moving into this place of like being more known. And with that, maybe not always liked. And that's kind of a conscious choice that I've been making over the summer, is realizing, okay, with the book coming out, with the multiple books, with the other projects I'm involved with, my profile is going to grow. And not everybody may like me. And I need to learn to be okay with that.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And not take it personally.
Yeah, I'm reading a book. I sort of bounce between a few books, but the Courage to Be Disliked. And the basic summary, very basic summary, is that we build things to shortcut from having to deal with certain things. So wanting to be liked is just a shortcut, because that's easier than having to address someone on a level where I'm going to engage with you on something that I disagree with, or I'm going to like, for mine is, my shortcut is losing my temper. If I lose my temper and I raise my voice, you back down. We don't have to talk about this anymore, right? Like, and so I've obviously learned that at a very young age, because it was maybe a mechanism for dealing with bullying. And it was like, okay, if people are a bit scared of me, then I don't have to deal with that anymore, right? Like, and so that it created some, like, a ring fence around me.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe being liked is kind of the same thing. You're saying, well, if I like you, you will always take my feedback well, or we don't have to like really get into stuff, or maybe you'll never tell me stuff that's going to be hurtful to me, because that's it. So.
And it's evolutionary too. Like, if we're liked, we're more likely to survive.
Yeah.
And a big part of being human in our genetics is survival.
Yeah.
So I think as we now have moved past the basic needs survival, we're starting to pay more attention to, and starting to experiment a bit with, like, okay, the things that have been naturally occurring for survival purposes, don't actually need them anymore, or not to the same degree. So let me experiment with flexing it a little bit.
And why do you say that you don't need them anymore?
We don't have to be liked to be able to have a place to live and to have food to eat and whatnot.
Yeah.
But maybe 1,000 years ago we did.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like the act of being liked is really about community, right? Or loneliness, not necessarily about fitting in.
Yeah.
So that changes a bit. And Jordan Peterson talks about that a little bit, is that, we start to condition each other from when we're children. So at 2 years old, you're a complete terror, and you're testing your environment in every possible way.
Yeah.
My son literally headbutts me whenever he gets excited. He's literally like, I'm going to test you now. And it's a tough one because I can't headbutt him back. But they do. They terrorize their surroundings. But then their peer group pulls them back in, because if you do that to a 2-year-old, you bite another 2-year-old, the other 2-year-old's going to bite you back. And you're going to realize, actually, okay, to fit in here, that's not a good thing that I want. And so we condition ourselves from very young to fit into the crowd, or to fit into the village. And like you said, now it's changing. It's changing quite a bit. So now we can start to really define ourselves in terms of what we need, and live a life based on what we need.
Yeah.
I think the worry is it could just get a bit selfish.
I think we all are selfish. And I think selfish has a bad reputation.
Okay.
Everything we do is to satisfy some need or desire we have.
True.
I got into this the other night with a close friend. And he was talking about how he's helping his mother with something. And I'm like, that's selfish. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, there's some need you have to be a good son.
True.
And yes, there's a need the other person has as well. So you're satisfying both your needs. But there's a self motive behind every action that we take. And I think it's better and healthier to just acknowledge that. So when it shows up, we're not surprised.
Yeah. And when you need to pull some of it back, like that's the other thing. It's like you have a win-win exchange with your parents. I'm a good son. Yeah. You have a good son, but you're going to get what you need. I want to get, but at some point you're going to have to draw a boundary. Like, okay, I have a new family. This is now, too much. You're going to have to pull back.
Yeah, because your needs have changed.
Your needs have changed. And that also has to be okay, that people acknowledge, like, okay, well, this relationship now has changed, and it's okay for you to be selfish, because I was also being selfish, right? Like, if everyone just acknowledges that, like, something I always used to say to people that were in bad relationships, like, you're not dating that person for them.
Yeah.
You're dating that person for yourself.
Yeah.
And if you continue to stay in a bad relationship, it's absolutely crazy, because then you've forgotten why you are there.
Yeah.
You see that people just like rotating in the worst possible relationship. One thing I wanted to ask you is that the start of your book, when you have kind of, I think epiphany is the right word, that, hey, things are really good, but I don't feel that good. You were in a really happy relationship, and that changed. Was the change in a relationship because of this new awareness that you were finding in yourself, or was it inevitably going to end that relationship?
I don't know. I've asked myself that a lot, and it almost doesn't matter anymore. Because whatever the stimuli were at the time, they put me on this path to learn how to live as an adult. Like, we learn how to live as children through our parents and students and teachers and culture and religion, and other sources. And then for me, that moment was like me saying, as an adult, I'm going to figure out how to live, and do that. The only way I know how as an engineer is to experiment and try things out.
Yeah.
So along the way, my attitude towards relationships evolved and changed, and it still is. And there were some experiments about relationships that I did not put in the book.
So not the one where you went a whole wardrobe shopping.
I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting to see if she read the book.
All right.
I saw her. She sent a comment to me or something. Some congratulations on the book. So I'm assuming that she might buy the book and realize she's in the opening chapter.
Okay. She doesn't go to the bottom of it. You sent me down this retail addiction. Nice. I kind of lost my train of thought, but I wanted to just sort of dig a little bit more deeper towards the end of the book. You started to talk about how to die. And this is a subject that's very close to me at the moment. We've had a passing in our family. My wife's father just recently passed away, and so can you tell me more about that? I haven't read that chapter yet. So what is How to Die like? Yeah,
so there's 2 parts to the chapter. So first, I'm sorry for the loss in the family.
Thank you.
In the first part, I talk about the loss of an uncle, and that was the closest I'd come to death as an adult. And it really forced me to understand. I had understood it intellectually, but to experience it and see it in my parents and all that was a trigger for me to reflect on it. And realizing that when somebody close to us passes, their body passes, and that's a science, biology thing we could rationalize. Could be from disease or illness or just old age or an accident or something. But what they mean to us isn't resident in their body. What they mean to us is resident in our spirit, our mind, our memories, mostly our memories.
Yeah.
And the imprints on how we move through life. So that hasn't died. That hasn't passed away. So that's kind of my offering, is to really focus on the quality, back to that word, and know that the quality stays within all the people that were infected with that quality.
Yeah.
And that quality continues. And that quality is actually what we value.
Yeah.
It's actually what we remember. The science of a body decaying and becoming old, that's an intellectual thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, just on that is that presence gives you a strange comfort no matter what that is, because you are easily able to attach the perception to them. Right? Like you've got a physical...
You get to remind yourself of those qualities.
Exactly. So that's what happens, right? You're like, and then when you remove the physical presence, the body, like there's this sudden like loss of like, where do I attach this? Right? Like and that for me is the abstract thing about someone passing.
Do you have pictures of your, I guess, father-in-law in the home?
Yeah, we do. So
I think there's something to that. And like, it's like, now I understood why there's always pictures of my grandparents as a kid. I didn't understand it.
Yes.
And now I do. And almost my memory of them is really the memory of the picture. Because again, it's something to provoke us to remember these qualities.
Yeah, makes sense. And I just going back to your relationship piece and the things, and it almost doesn't matter now. So now I've got my train of thought back. It's a podcast, so we can do these things. But you evolve over time with people, and it really is like when relationships end, it is okay, because you are a different person. Like, sitting next to a river, the two things are true about a man who sits next to a river. It's not the same man, and it's not the same river, right? Like, and what I've learned through marriage is that as you change, you're constantly working on building that bridge over the river, so to speak, to stick with the analogy. Like, it's always in maintenance mode. It's always in work, because you are evolving as people. It's impossible to think that you will stay the same. And that's the interesting thing, is that you can't hold on to past relationships where you haven't been able to build that bridge, because it's going to destroy you both, right? Like, it'll pull you both into the river.
Into the river,
And so now, where do you go from here in terms of, now that you've put yourself into a how to live? Have you developed practice around this other than the experimentation pieces? Has this been like who you are now? Now I'm minimalist. I don't buy a lot of things. I don't, I've got a strong sense of how to trust people. You've got this model. Does the model keep growing, or is this like this it?
Well, to your earlier point about change, I've changed. I actually buy a lot of things now.
Okay.
And for those who haven't read the book, I went 2 years without buying a single physical object.
Yeah.
So I went to one edge, one extreme, and I don't know if I'm on the extreme of consumerism as I was a long time ago, but I'm probably somewhere into a medium to high consumer of physical goods. You've been to my home.
Yeah.
It's not the type of place that somebody who's houseless lives in.
Yeah.
So I think the key, and we can abstract this, is to not be rigid. It's to not be overly structured. I'm naturally a structured person. I'm naturally an organized person. And the book is called How to Live, but it really should be called How I Learned to Live.
Yeah.
Right? So the entire book is written in first person. I don't know if you picked up on this, but the word you doesn't appear once in the entire book.
I didn't pick that up.
And I doubt you could find a single self-help book
Yes, that doesn't tell you what to do.
I get triggered when people tell me what to do.
Yeah.
My weekly blog doesn't have the word you in it, and that's been 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's very much sharing how I've learned, and it's not a formula. It's not even a formula for myself. Definitely it's not a formula for anybody else.
Yeah.
And it's more to take people on the journey of the formula is really just to be open and to be curious.
Yeah, that's very clear, is that, hey, open yourself up and don't overly attach to anything. Like, don't over attach to your current state. Don't over attach to things. Don't put so much like sort of emphasis on all of these things and raise the importance, because at any point in time you can let it all go and you can decide to change. That was a very clear message. And what I just realized while you were talking to me now is I absolutely triggered you before. When you first moved here, I was like, my natural thing is to want to help people. And when you were a new guy here, just moved, I was like, I'm going to be this guy who's going to make you really happy. I don't know why I took it on myself that was. And I sent you a message like, hey, I'm having this thing at my house and you will come. It's like kind of like it was indirect, like you have to come. I want you to be welcome here and have like people look like you need my help. You've been excellent at building a massive community around yourself here. But I realized, and then I got a message back saying, yeah, I'll let you know. So it's just like, oh, I definitely triggered this guy. Don't tell Kunal what to do.
That's accurate. Yeah. Been working for myself my whole life.
Yeah, that must be hard. Like, there's no way back for you to work. You can only work with people, but mostly you'd want to lead it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been in a leadership role since I was 6 years old. So this is book number 3.
Yeah,
it's called Chief Everything Officer. So it's a 15-year business memoir of being a CEO of a tech company for 15 years. And the opening chapter talks about when I was 6 years old. And as you have young kids, I have a younger sister, a year younger. Most kids play restaurant and kitchen. We played office. And I was the boss. My sister was my secretary. And we had business cards and briefcases and very important meetings. This is me at 6.
What were their meetings about at 6?
I have no idea.
We need to talk about the inventory in the pantry. It's a massive problem. Yeah, we're going to have to speak to the workers.
So, and I started the family. I have a very large Indian extended family, like over 100 people around the world. So I started a family newspaper when I was 8 called the Family Express, and I was the editor. I was telling everybody to write articles and send them to me, and that's how I learned how to use Microsoft Word when it first came out. Wow. And learned word processing. I was using a computer at 8 back in the early 90s. And printed it and physically mailed it to the family all over the world. And when I was 10, I joined student government, which is a thing in North America. I've learned in Europe it's not as much of a thing. Yeah. But I was the class rep representing the class voice to the principal and the teachers, and did that for 10 years. So
yeah, you said your first sort of public announcement on the school intercom was kind of like it was like a bad one.
Yeah. So I've been in a leadership role for 30 years.
I don't know. Did that come from your family environment that you looked up to someone and said that's what I want to be, or was there a moment of clarity? I've had guests on who's like, one of my guests, Razan Dan, was like, he saw Kofi Annan speak and he was like, how did this African guy end up being the head of the UN? And that was a very clear moment of clarity for him where I want to be something like that. Or was it just you had this environment where your parents were like successful entrepreneurs? What was it, do you think?
It was a mix of things. So my parents were poor immigrants. They immigrated from India to Canada with nothing a month before I was born. And they struggled. They struggled a lot. They still choose to struggle sometimes now, even though they don't need to. I have to remind them of that often.
Yeah.
I think birth order plays a role. That's my justification. So my father is the youngest of 10 siblings. Oh, wow. My mother the youngest of 6, and then my sister the youngest of 2. So they're all babies basically.
Mm.
And I, as the older and as the only older sibling in the four of us, I naturally like stepped into that space. And I've noticed this, it's so subtle. It's like a millisecond.
Mm.
It's like a group standing in front of the elevator and waiting to see who presses the button.
Yes.
It's just a millisecond. And the older siblings have an instinct to lean in, and the younger ones have an instinct to just wait to see, does somebody else do it? So that like compounded over a long time period.
Oh.
I give my parents a lot of credit because they just gave me a lot of space.
Yeah.
They didn't tell us, me and my sister, what to do. So my sister, too, equally bossy like me.
Okay.
When her 2-year-old starts to be bossy, she's like, I don't know why he's like this. I'm like, why do you think?
Okay.
But our parents gave us a lot of space.
Yeah.
A lot of space to experiment, to explore, to find the edges, to find the boundaries ourselves. They didn't tell us what to do.
Yeah. I've actually noticed that about Indian families in general, and I don't like to generalize, but living in India, met a lot of my colleagues, sort of kids, and not sort of kids, they're actual kids. I met them and I noticed that there was a lot more accommodation of their children and their needs. A temper tantrum wasn't addressed like, don't do that. It was like, well, you're going to run that emotional course and we're still here to like let you run through that. And there was the family dynamic's incredible. Like when I spoke to a lot of people that I was interviewing for roles, like a big priority in terms of why they wanted this job or wanting to be successful was about supporting their parents. A lot of even the US based Indian folks that wanted to come back to India were looking for opportunities. Were like, my parents are getting old now, and they had really great roles in the big tech companies in the US, and they're like, my parents are aging now. It's time for me to come home and take care of them. And I that for me was like something like really inspiring about my time in India, is like what that family unit looked like, and it's paying off. Like if you look at, like India is currently ruling the world in terms of leadership roles across like major corporations in government, and that's got to be speak to like the really good family dynamics that come out of India.
So you're hoping your kids are going to do that for you?
I hope so. I hope so, because I'm like in the startup space as an entrepreneur. I'm going to be on a burn a lot of stuff. I really need them to do well.
I think what you're touching on is the communal culture. I've definitely got a flavor of that living here in Portugal now for 2 years. And India has the communal culture. Spain does. Italy does. China does. Canada does not. America does not. The UK does not. Germany does not. France does not. So the more individualistic societies versus the communal societies, the communal is to value the whole. The individual is to value the one.
Yeah. And that was a big thing for, like, my wife's family's Portuguese, and you can definitely feel that actually, and you spoke about it in your book, is that you didn't really need to make friends because you had such a big family dynamic, right? And so every weekend was just full of kids. Like it was completely like that. And I think that was a big rub point for my wife and I. Is like, well, every weekend's at your family's house. Like, I want to do other stuff too, and now I'm like, oh, I love it. It's like you go there, you veg out from a Sunday afternoon, you have a great lunch, and then the kids just like absolutely have the best time, and they have the best childhood. So it is really, I definitely feel the value of it now.
Yeah. I think we're very lucky to be living in Portugal.
Yeah, that's true. And then you were speaking just before Web Summit, and I took a lot of what you were saying at that. And the one specific thing that you said is that I came to Portugal to live. You had been working, you've done the work piece, and now it's about coming here to live. And but what does that mean for your current work? Like, how are you placing your work today?
Yeah, the truth is I don't know. I'm still figuring that out. I at times am more passive as an investor. At other times I'm active as an operator, and I haven't found that balance yet for me at this moment in life. I am single. I want to start a family, so I'm keeping space for that part of my life, where in the past I did not keep space for that. So I'm mindful of new work commitments I take on and to what degree. But there's an entrepreneur in me, and I say yes to lots of things, and that energy has to come out. Right now, it's coming out through writing books, lots of books.
It's pretty.
So that's really like this energy to express. And in the past, that energy came out through starting businesses, and then in the future, it'll be some other shape or form. I think we all have this energy. I have this drive, this entrepreneurial spirit, this creativity, and then the shape and form of that, I think, will just keep changing.
Yeah. And just I've noted while you're talking is that you've mentioned that you're single a few times, and we've spoken about relationships. And typically, an older guy who's an entrepreneur who likes to be the leader battles to find love. And I think because you are, not to speak for you, but what I've noticed is that you either go into it with a relationship and it's strong and it gets stronger, or you don't go in and you become quite difficult to date. How do you approach that? How do you address that? Because you've got these kind of conflicting needs. Like relationships need time and nurturing, and then so do businesses, like small children.
Well, we should do another podcast with my exes and see what they have to say.
You can leave me with a list.
I think for everybody, having clarity of what's important at this given moment in life is critical. When I was going through a lot of the experiments with how to live, it was this curiosity of learning about myself and what do I value, what do I believe. And at certain times, it was growing my business. And currently, it's probably my physical health. I've been spending a lot of time on physical health, relationship building, connections, building community, getting momentum building, and living in Portugal. So I'm prioritizing these activities.
Yeah,
we can't do it all. We can do anything, but we can't do everything.
Yeah.
So being able to make those trade-offs, I think life is about making trade-offs and making them consciously and intentionally leads to more satisfaction.
Yeah, and the right relationships actually build a bigger platform for the other things that you want to do, right? Like it becomes like a home base that you say, okay, well, I can branch off of this now. And I think that's a quality that you have to kind of give time to find and grow. I'm going to change tack a little bit and just talk about the other book that you've written, 2034. It's like a predictive book around AI. I haven't read it at all. I've just finished How to Live. I'll get to it. But AI is a baby of yours now. It's almost like you've taken the AI bull by the horns for Portugal and say you're going to establish AI in Portugal. Like, what's the vision for you on this?
Yeah, so I started AI.pt, and the vision there, it's a nonprofit actually. So the vision there is to build community, and it is a give back project for me. As expats and foreigners here, I feel like we're like the typo in Portugal, or any expat in any foreign country. Mm-hmm. Like we're the thing that doesn't fully fit, but we're there.
Yeah.
So it's like the extra letter in the word.
Yeah.
And I was very intentional in talking to other expats who had moved to Singapore, Dubai, to other countries. I thought, okay, I want to do something from the start. And that's where AI.pt was born from, is let me contribute. I've built community around tech several times before, university in Canada in the early kind of first wave of the tech boom. Mm-hmm. So I kind of know the playbook, and I know how I can contribute. And I'm living here, so I want to feel connected to the space. Yeah. It's been amazing. It's allowed me to connect with a lot more Portuguese people, people in the tech world, government, corporate, and really understand how the economy and the system works. I have lots of judgments and opinions.
Yeah.
I shared some of them that day at the event. So I think there's some challenges relative to other economies and how I see that they work. So I think there's some work to do here in Portugal. But I was on stage at Web Summit last week I was the only non-Portuguese person talking about how to build the Portuguese tech ecosystem around AI.
Yeah.
And my message was clear, is AI is not going to wait. I feel in Portugal, we generally have to learn how to wait.
Yeah.
Everything is generally a little slower than we'd like it to be. And it's time to speed up.
Yeah.
So it's turning a bit into advocacy as well as community building.
So I've, just to go on the Portugal thread a little bit, is that I found that often the words don't match the action. So we're talking a big game, but the team isn't really developed behind the game that we're talking about. And so I really like what you're saying about AI.pt and being an ambassador for these things. Like, if the first piece is that we live here now, if we want to be part of the community, we have to build things for the community too.
Yeah.
And so we came here for good opportunities, good lifestyle, great weather, good tax breaks. But now there also has to be a part of not just our money, our sort of our experience and our intelligence and our ability to bring that global knowledge here. And what I hope is that what you're doing gets supported internally as much. It's like you say, like, hey, that's a really good initiative, and here is the money and the resources behind that to make sure that this thing absolutely flies.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah,
it does require, like, we don't always know a good thing when we see it. So that's the question mark I have.
Are you talking about in terms of people acknowledging AI as a good thing?
Yeah, or different people like me who are starting different projects. There's a number with different focuses.
Yeah.
Or even just foreigners coming to Portugal.
Yeah.
In the time that we've been here, for me, the last 2.5 years, I've seen the attitude and the tide shift, not in a positive way.
Yeah, it's becoming like a political attack vector, right?
And short term, it's okay, whatever. But medium term, it's going to have big consequences.
Yeah.
If foreigners don't keep coming, don't keep bringing their smarts, and their money to develop. And, Portugal 10 years ago was nowhere. It wasn't on the map.
Yeah.
Tourism now put it on the map. The hotels were built. The infrastructure was fixed. And I feel there's a risk that the tide shifts and some other Southern European or Eastern European or some other place becomes a hotspot. And then 2-3 years from now, new government in place, anti-foreigner policies, which is what we've seen for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Pretty heavy. We'll have costs and realize, like, there's not enough of a local economy to invest in infrastructure.
Yeah. So we have to work fast, right? Like, you have to beat that narrative, right? Like, AIPT being successful quickly and proving itself is a critical thing.
There's work to do. So yesterday I spoke at Nova University. We did our first AI.pt event on campus, and I always love spending time with students. And a lot of people spent time with me when I was a student, so I feel a strong affinity to give back.
Yeah.
So I had 150, 200 students in the auditorium for the whole afternoon talking about AI. I had 6-7 speakers, gave everybody a copy of the book, and then at the end, 5-6 students came up to me saying, "How do I get a job in Canada?"
That's not good.
And I was like, this is the engineering students in their 4th year of university. I was like, why? Just work here.
Yeah.
They're like, no. Tell me, like, who can you introduce me to in Canada?
Yeah. Now that's something that Tim Vieira sort of kind of spoke about. Is like, our kids are leaving because they think that the opportunities are bigger out there. And that's why he's running for president. He said, I want to build opportunities here. And I think that in terms of quality of people, education levels, those are all really good. So we have to create the platforms here for those things for people to have the opportunity to believe that here is viable. Here's a good option.
The raw ingredients are there.
Yeah.
The raw ingredients are definitely there.
Better way of saying it too.
But they have to be put together, and there's changes, and like work has to be done. And what happened a few weeks ago with the Prime Minister, it's not good.
Yeah, just so anyone who's not from Portugal, it's like the Prime Minister of Portugal has resigned under corruption scandal.
It's a bag with 75,000 euros of cash that was found in his home.
In his home, right? And
not a good look.
Not a good look, exactly. And I'll tell you what disappointed me, like, about that is that I moved from South Africa with corruption in our government is so bad. And then I see this in the news and I'm like, come on, guys. We know better. Like, come on, we're in Europe here. Like, what is going on? It's like, I'm so disappointed. And then the Swedish are all crying because the Prime Minister built a deck. Guys, just relax. It's a deck.
So, I'm a real estate investor and I have a few projects, and one of them has to involve the courts now, and the rule of law is not as strong here. I'm learning firsthand. Coming from Canada, I realized how spoiled we are.
Yeah.
So these types of things have to change for people to have trust.
Yeah. So there will be consequence to the bad players, right?
Yeah, and the just inefficient players.
Yeah.
Things take years.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't lead to a system that's there to support the growth and development of the economy.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Just on your AI piece, now you've enabled yourself with a bot. So I've engaged with your bot last night.
What did you ask? So it's kunalgpt.com.
Kunalgpt.com. And we started having a conversation about AI. So I asked a question, and I'll go back and check the question, but immediately it came back and asked me a question. I'm like, you clever guy. This is a great way.
I programmed that in to make it conversational.
Yeah, but also I thought it's a very clever way to gather data on like great ways to grow AI. You know, I thought it was incredible. So it starts with, hello, my friend, my name is Kunal. Send me a message below to chat about anything. I said, hey, Kunal, is this the digital distillation and representation of Kunal or actually Kunal? And he said, the digital age, where we can be in two places at once. Let's just say I'm here to share Kunal's thoughts and insights. Now, how can I assist you today? And then I wrote, you've written 2 books, correct? And then it goes, yes, indeed, I've penned 2 books. And it goes into, it's like, what's on your mind? And then I said, what about your book on AI? It's like, oh, you're referring to 2034. So it was like really engaging. But by the end of it, we had developed a way to enable AI in farming communities in Africa, helping them build.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I mean, we came up with a name for it. It's like, what do you think? Like, it asked me, what do you think the name for this project should be? I'm like, we'll call it Dreamcatcher. It's like, I love that. So I was like, and my wife comes on and says, like, what are you doing? Like, supposed to be getting the kids ready for bed. I'm like, oh, I'm just chatting to Kunal. Kind of.
You are.
Yeah.
I get a screenshot at least once a day from a friend.
It's amazing.
Saying, I'm talking to you.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And so what is it for you? Is it just living the brand, or what are you enabling by bringing AI as having a bot for yourself?
It's an experiment.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the technology in this moment. The reason I wrote 2034, it's 10 years into the future, but looking back at the last 10 years. So it's a book about the future, but written in past tense.
Okay.
So I also have something unique in my writing style. Like this book doesn't have the word you in it. 2034 is a past tense book about the future.
Okay.
So it messes with you on purpose. It's essentially a prompt for humans.
Okay.
So while we're prompting AI, you're going to read this book and you're going to be forced to think about things.
Yeah.
And really about change and how open you are to change.
I actually like that about your writing in general, is that I've read one book, but I felt really like activated. I was like, okay, this is thought provoking, and you know, there was a lot of introspection of what you're saying. So, and even with your bot, I felt that it made me question things. And again, we're going back to what we were talking about in the beginning, is articulating our thoughts on things like, what do I think about AI? What do I really think about it? That came out, you know, so it was very good sort of exchange for me, because I was really like, I think that AI is going to enable people, but you always get 2 buckets of people. You get people who will cry foul and be a victim, and you'll get people who say, this is a massive enabler. And the enablers will move forward with things, and the people who are crying foul will stay in the same bucket.
And those buckets would exist if it was the government, if it was mobile phones, if it was whatever the technology or whatever the change is.
Yeah.
In the face of change, what is, anybody who's listening to this or watching this, what is your instinctual response? And then are you happy with that response?
Yeah, that's it, right? Like, and it's not AI thing, it's everything. And you often stand in front of a room of people and you can very clearly see, even just talking to salespeople, this person is going to run with it, and this person will not.
Yeah.
And you know, you can come and say, I'm going to give you a new commission structure that's way better, but you're going to have to take a step back in this commission structure today. And the competitive, I'm going to go after it, will immediately be like, done. And then you can sort of very clearly see the ones who are going to be like, no, out, big problem. So it's just, I think I don't know if it's human nature or if it's just like a defensive mechanism that everybody can overcome.
I think it's conditioning. I think it's nurture.
Okay.
It's the environment. If we grew up around people who are inspiring and show those attitudes and behaviors, then we start to demonstrate those attitudes and behaviors.
Yeah.
In all dimensions.
I really enjoyed talking to you. Like, I'm going to start wrapping up now, but what's next now? So what are the big things that you want to get out? Like, I'm expecting way more books to come out of you, but like, what are the big projects and where can we find you?
You can talk to me anytime you want, 24/7.
Kunal,
kunalgpt.com.
Yeah.
And it's an experiment. Maybe I'll say something inappropriate and shut it down one day. But right now it's an experiment.
At least they can only cancel your bot and not you.
Yes, yes. I'm really inspired to share with the world, share more of myself. That means my experiences. That means my ideas for the future. And that means my practices. And it's a vulnerable step for me to choose to be known and choose to step into that. And I encourage people to disagree. I encourage people to choose for themselves what makes sense for them. I think you'll see everything I'm sharing is from a first-person perspective. And it's what I think, what I believe, and everybody's free to make their own choices.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Awesome. Cheers.